This is not a book about motivation. It is a manual for rewiring your brain at the most fundamental level, the level where willpower fails and biology takes over. If you have ever found yourself longing to slip into deep work only to be pulled under by the riptide of distractions, you are not alone. You are not broken. You are running on hardware that was never designed for the world you live in. Modern life has turned your attention into a battleground, and your dopamine system is the front line. Every swipe, every ping, every just one quick check, they all push your brain's set point for stimulation higher, until even the thought of focused effort feels like deprivation. You keep chasing hacks, routines, tricks, none of them stick. The reason is simple. You are trying to change the output without rewriting the code. This book is the code rewrite. Dopamine loading is not about resisting distraction. It is about engineering your reward circuitry so that focus feels easier, not harder, than mindless scrolling. Inside these pages, you will find a system built on hard neuroscience, relentless pragmatism, and an intolerance for wishful thinking. You will discover why deep work feels physically uncomfortable in a world calibrated for shallow hits. More importantly, you will learn a step-by-step protocol to lower your noise floor, budget your stimulation, and teach your brain to crave effort the way it once craved novelty. You will not be asked to abandon technology or move to a monastery. You will not be told to just try harder. Instead, you will implement a series of tactical, sequential interventions. Budgeting your attention, redesigning your morning, tackling the hardest work first, structuring time for depth, and constructing a personal reward engine. You will learn to master delay, stabilize your drive, and build a flywheel of focus that outlasts any burst of enthusiasm. The promise is simple. Deep work can become addictive, not through force, but through design. If you follow the system, the resistance will fade, the craving for novelty will shrink, and the signal of meaningful work will finally cut through the noise. You are not here to read about productivity. You are here to build a new operating system for your brain. Read with intent. Begin with action. Let's rebuild your reward system, one protocol at a time. Chapter 1. Flip the switch. Why do you fail? You have the ambition. You have the goal. You sat down at your desk with the best intentions, swearing that today would be the day you finally crushed that major project. Yet here you are, 20 minutes later. You are not working. You are scrolling. You are checking an inbox that was empty 3 minutes ago. You are reorganizing files that don't need reorganizing. You feel a physical resistance to the work, a magnetic repulsion that pushes your attention away from the hard stuff and toward the shiny, the fast, and the easy. You might think you are lazy. You might think you lack discipline. You might think you have lost your passion. You are wrong. You are not lazy. You are fighting a biological war with weapons you do not understand, and you are losing. The reason you cannot focus is not a character defect. It is a math problem. Your brain is running a calculation every single second, and right now, the equation is broken. You have accidentally trained your nervous system to reject deep work the same way a biological system rejects a poison. This chapter is the diagnostic. We're going to look under the hood of your motivation engine and see exactly which wires are crossed. We're going to stop blaming your willpower and start fixing your neurochemistry. You are here because you want to do work that matters. You want to stop feeling like a scattered, reactive amateur and start operating like a disciplined professional. To do that, you must first understand the enemy. The enemy is not the internet. The enemy is not your phone. The enemy is a mechanism inside your own head called the prediction error, and it is currently set to destroy your career. Your brain is a prediction machine. To understand why you can't focus, you have to understand how your brain processes reward. We often talk about dopamine as the pleasure molecule, but that is a massive oversimplification. Dopamine is not about pleasure. Dopamine is about desire and prediction. It is the currency your brain uses to decide where to spend its energy. There are two main modes of dopamine transmission you need to care about: tonic and phasic. Tonic dopamine is the background hum. It is the baseline level of drive that keeps you moving. Phasic dopamine is the spike. It is the sudden rush you get from a notification, a like, a piece of breaking news, or a bite of sugar. Here is the problem. Your brain is constantly predicting how much reward it will get from an action. It establishes a baseline, known as your hedonic set point. This is your normal. In a natural environment, this set point is low. It allows you to find satisfaction in steady, slow efforts like reading a book, writing a report, or solving a complex problem. But you do not live in a natural environment. You live in a casino. Every time you check your phone, switch tabs, or chase a notification, you blast your brain with a phasic spike of dopamine. It feels good for a second. But if you do this all day, and you raise your hedonic set point. You lift the floor. Your brain starts to expect that high level of stimulation as the new normal. Now imagine you try to switch from that high voltage state to deep work. Deep work is slow. It is quiet. It offers no immediate applause. The reward from deep work is delayed and subtle. When you pivot from a high stimulation environment to a low stimulation task, your brain screams. It registers a negative prediction error. It predicted a spike, but it got silence. To your brain, this feels like a punishment. It feels like pain. This is why you feel that magnetic repulsion. Your brain is trying to save you from what it perceives as a low-value activity. It urges you to tab switch, to check Slack, to find something, anything, that matches the high stimulation baseline you have established. You are not fighting boredom, you are fighting withdrawal. The compound interest of stupidity. If you continue to ignore this mechanism, the consequences are not just a few wasted afternoons. The damage compounds. We are talking about the difference between a career that skyrockets and a career that stalls out in middle management. When you constantly interrupt yourself to feed this novelty addiction, you create attention residue. Every time you switch contexts, a part of your attention remains stuck on the previous task. If you switch every 10 minutes, you are never fully present. You are operating with a fraction of your cognitive capacity. You might be sitting at your desk for 8 hours, but your brain is only effectively working for 2. This leads to the tolerance spiral. Just like any addiction, the more you indulge in cheap dopamine, the more you need to feel the same effect. The news needs to be more shocking, the videos need to be faster, the notifications need to be more frequent. Meanwhile, your capacity for deep work creates an inverse curve. The work feels flatter, duller, and more impossible. The result is cognitive drag. You become busy, but you stop getting better. You stop learning. Deep work is the only place where skill acquisition happens. It is the only place where synthesis occurs. If you cannot access that state, you are doomed to repeat the same shallow tasks over and over again. You become a router of information rather than a creator of value. You become replaceable. The alternative, addiction to depth. Now, let's flip the script. Imagine a different reality. Imagine sitting down to a complex, difficult task and feeling a pull toward it rather than away from it. Imagine a morning where you work for 90 minutes without a single urge to check your phone. Imagine finishing your day with more energy than you started because you spent it in flow rather than in a state of fractured anxiety. This is not a fantasy. This is what happens when you align your dopamine prediction errors. When you lower your baseline stimulation and structure your day correctly, deep work stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a relief. You can reset your hedonic set point. You can train your brain to release dopamine in response to effort, not just novelty. This is the concept of dopamine loading. We are going to engineer your day so that the hard things provide the chemical reward your brain craves. When you achieve this, you unlock compounding depth. Your focus windows stretch from 20 minutes to 2 hours. You achieve reliable flow. You ship work that is 10 times better than your peers because you are the only one capable of sustaining the thought long enough to finish it. You shift your identity. You stop being the person who struggles to start. You become the person who finishes. The protocol. This book is not a collection of tips. It is a system. It is a precise, sequential protocol designed to dismantle your current bad habits and replace them with a high-performance architecture. We are going to rebuild your workday from the ground up. We will not reveal the specific tactics of every chapter right now, but you need to understand the roadmap. You need to see the machinery we are going to build. First, we will tackle the stimulation budget. We have to stop the bleeding. We cannot fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. We will look at how you manage the noise in your life and create a mathematical limit on how much garbage you let in. This is about creating the headroom required for focus to exist. Next, we will install the focus floor. This is about your morning. The first inputs of your day set the dopamine trajectory for everything that follows. If you start wrong, you spend the rest of the day fighting uphill. We will implement a protocol that ensures you start aligned. Then, we move to hard first. This is the leverage point. We will use specific techniques to teach your brain that difficult effort leads to reward. We are going to rewire the prediction error so that the friction of starting a hard task disappears. Once you can start, we need to keep you going. That is where deep blocks come in. We will structure your time to maximize tonic dopamine and minimize the crash. We will protect your attention with an iron cage. But a system without a payoff will eventually fail. That is why we will build a reward engine. You are going to learn how to pay yourself. We will use timing and biology to make the work feel satisfying. We will stop using rewards to procrastinate and start using them to reinforce the behavior we want. Finally, we will look at the long game with delay mastery and stable drive. We will extend your horizon so you can work on massive projects without losing steam, and we will stabilize your motivation so you get off the emotional roller coaster. Why this order matters. You might be tempted to skip ahead. You might want to jump straight to the rewards or the deep work techniques. Do not do this. The sequence is critical. You cannot perform deep work if your baseline stimulation is screaming for a distraction. That is why we must budget the stimulation first. You cannot sustain a long project if you haven't learned to enjoy the friction of a single morning. That is why we start with the day, then the block, then the horizon. We are building a ladder. Each step reinforces the one before it. We are using the logic of reinforcement learning. We align the prediction error, then we reinforce the behavior, then we stabilize the system. If you try to stabilize a system that is fundamentally broken, you will just be stabilizing dysfunction. Trust the process. Follow the steps in order. Winners engineer, losers hope. There is a fundamental difference between the people who crush their goals and the people who just talk about them. It is not talent. It is not intelligence. Losers rely on hope. They hope they will wake up motivated. They hope they will have enough willpower to resist the urge to scroll. They treat their focus like the weather, something that just happens to them. They are victims of their own biology, tossed around by every ping and notification that enters their world. Winners do not hope. Winners engineer. Winners understand that willpower is a battery that runs out. They do not rely on it. Instead, they build systems that make discipline automatic. They design their environment so that the urge to switch tasks is suffocated before it can breathe. They measure their throughput. They manage their neurochemistry with the same precision a pilot manages fuel. You are going to stop being a victim of your impulses. You are going to stop negotiating with yourself. The amateur wakes up and asks, "Do I feel like working today?" The professional has a system that makes the question irrelevant. You have spent enough time chasing spikes. You have spent enough time frittering away your potential on things that do not matter. It is time to stop feeding the noise and start feeding the signal. It is time to turn your dopamine into a weapon for productivity rather than a tool for self-destruction. The curiosity gap. You are likely feeling a mix of excitement and skepticism. You want this to work, but you are wondering how you are actually going to lower this hedonic set point without moving to a cave and throwing away your smartphone. You are wondering how you can possibly compete with the algorithmic supercomputers designed to steal your attention. The answer lies in a concept you have probably never measured. It is a number that dictates the quality of your entire life. yet you are completely ignoring it. It is the invisible metric that determines whether you will have a good day or a bad day before you even drink your coffee. To fix your focus, we have to count the cost of your current reality. We have to look at the data. In the next chapter, we are going to introduce you to the stimulation budget, and you will see exactly why your brain has been fighting you all this time. You will realize that you haven't just been distracted, you have been bankrupting your attention economy every single morning. The fix begins with a simple audit, but be warned, once you see the numbers, you can never unsee them. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Stimulation Budget. You are bankrupt. You might have money in the bank, but your neural economy is in the red. You wake up every morning with a limited amount of cognitive currency, a finite budget of attention and focus. Before you even sit down to do the work that actually pays your bills or builds your legacy, you have likely spent 80% of that budget. You spent it on the news. You spent it on a scroll through a social feed. You spent it checking an inbox that contained nothing but other people's priorities. You treated your attention like it was free, splashing it around on high-intensity, low-value inputs. By the time you opened your main project, you were already operating in a deficit. You feel this deficit as a physical sensation. It manifests as a jittery inability to sit still. It feels like a magnetic repulsion from your work. You think you are tired, but you are not tired. You are overstimulated. You have flooded your system with cheap noise, and now the expensive signal of deep work cannot compete. This chapter is about stopping the bleeding. We are going to audit your inputs. We are going to look at the cost of the information you consume, and we are going to set a hard, non-negotiable budget. You cannot fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom, and right now, your attention bucket is riddled with leaks. The high cost of free inputs. To understand why you need a budget, you have to understand the concept of the noise floor. Imagine you are trying to listen to a piece of classical music. It is complex, subtle, and requires attention to appreciate. Now imagine you are trying to listen to that music while standing in the middle of a construction site with jackhammers pounding on the pavement. You cannot hear the music. It is not because your ears are broken. It is because the noise floor is too high. The signal-to-noise ratio is destroyed. This is exactly what you are doing to your brain. Deep work is the classical music. It is subtle. The reward it provides is a slow burn, a tonic hum of satisfaction that comes from progress. But the inputs you surround yourself with, the algorithmic feeds, the breaking news alerts, the constant ping of group chats, are the jackhammers. They are high salience inputs. They scream for your attention. When you expose your brain to these high salience inputs, you raise your hedonic set point. You teach your brain that normal means a new image every 3 seconds. Normal means a shock, a laugh, or a burst of outrage every time you swipe your thumb. Once that becomes your baseline, the stillness required for deep work feels unbearable. It feels like boredom. It feels like death. You are not bored because the work is boring. You are bored because you have ruined your palate. You have desensitized yourself to the subtle flavor of effort because you have been gorging on the digital equivalent of pure stimulant. The novelty saturation curve. There is a law in economics called diminishing returns, and it applies directly to your dopamine receptors. The first time you check your phone in the morning, you get a hit. It feels good. The second time, it feels okay. By the 50th time, you are not checking it to feel good. You are checking it to stop feeling bad. You are checking it to maintain a baseline of numbness. This is the novelty saturation curve. As you pour more stimulation into your system, you get less satisfaction out of it, but your craving for it increases. You end up in a state of high arousal but low satisfaction. You are wired and tired. You are frantic but unproductive. The only way to break this cycle is to aggressively lower the noise floor. We need to engage in strategic understimulation. This does not mean living like a monk. It does not mean throwing your technology into the ocean. It means applying the same logic to your attention that a CFO applies to a balance sheet. We are going to categorize your expenses, cut the waste, and invest only in what generates a return. Tiering your inputs. The first step in building your budget is to stop treating all screens as equal. They are not. We need to categorize your inputs into 3 distinct tiers based on their dopamine cost. First, you have low salience inputs. These are your tools: text editors, coding environments, long-form books, white noise, instrumental music. These inputs are quiet. They do not change unless you make them change. They do not have algorithms designed to hijack your limbic system. These are the safe foods of your information diet. You can consume these freely because they do not spike your set point. Second, you have medium salience inputs. These are the utilities of communication: email, Slack, text messages, news aggregators. They offer some novelty. You don't know what the next email will say, but they are generally finite. You check them, you process them, you close them. They are expensive, but sometimes necessary. We need to cap these. Third, and most dangerous, are the high salience inputs. These are the predators: TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, Twitter feeds, 24-hour news cycles. These platforms are engineered by some of the smartest people on the planet with one singular goal: to keep you scrolling. They offer rapid-fire, unpredictable, high-intensity novelty. They are the jackhammers. These are the inputs that bankrupt you. Most people sprinkle high-salience inputs throughout their entire day. They check Instagram before they get out of bed. They watch a YouTube video during lunch. They scroll Twitter while waiting for a file to upload. This is a disaster. It keeps your noise floor permanently elevated, making deep work impossible to access. The rules of the budget. Now we set the budget. The goal here is anti-tolerance design. We want to lower your tolerance for stimulation so that simple work feels rewarding again. Rule number 1 is the most critical. Gate the highs. You are no longer allowed to consume high salience inputs during the active hours of your day. They are not forbidden. They are simply rescheduled. You push all of them to a specific window after your work is done. This does 2 things. First, it protects your focus during the day. Second, it turns those inputs into a reward rather than a distraction. You earn the scroll. Rule number 2 is to cap the mediums. You cannot leave your email or Slack open on a second monitor. That is like trying to work with a tap dripping on your forehead. You check them at specific intervals and then you close them completely. You decide when you are available. You do not let the world decide for you. Rule number 3 is the detox micro window. You need to reintroduce silence into your life. When you walk from your desk to the kitchen to get water, do not take your phone. When you are waiting for the elevator, do not check your notifications. Stare at the wall. Be bored for 30 seconds. These tiny moments of understimulation act as a reset button for your brain. They lower the temperature. They remind your nervous system that it is safe to be quiet. The myths you tell yourself. Right now, your brain is probably generating excuses. It is panicking at the thought of losing its constant stream of noise. Let's dismantle those excuses before they take root. You might tell yourself that you need variety to be creative. You think that bouncing between tabs and seeing random images sparks inspiration. This is a lie. Randomness is not creativity. Creativity is synthesis. It is taking 2 disparate ideas and forging them into something new. That forging process requires heat and pressure only exist in the depths of focus. Constant switching dissipates that pressure. You are not being creative. You are being distracted. True originality comes from staring at a problem long enough for the obvious answers to fade away, leaving only the brilliant ones. You might tell yourself that you have enough willpower to handle the noise. You think you can leave your phone on the desk and just choose not to look at it. You are wrong. Willpower is a finite resource. Every time your phone buzzes and you ignore it, you pay a tax. You burn a unit of energy to resist the urge. Eventually, you run out of energy and you succumb. Why fight a war you don't have to fight? Winners do not have more willpower than losers. They just need less of it because they design environments that don't require it. Enforcing the guardrails. So how do you actually execute this? You need to make the budget visible and physical. Start by mapping your top 20 daily inputs. Look at your phone's screen time data. Look at your browser history. Be honest, label them low, medium, or high. You will likely find that you are spending hours in the high tier. Next, set your numeric limits. Maybe you allow yourself 5 checks of medium inputs per day. Maybe you allow 0 high inputs until 6 p.m. Write these numbers down. Then, clean your environment. When you are in a deep work block, there should be one screen and one window. If you are writing, the browser is closed. If you are coding, the email client is quit. Not minimized, quit. Use a physical timer for your breaks. If you use your phone to time your break, you will see a notification and you will be sucked back into the vortex. Buy a cheap kitchen timer. It is the best productivity investment you will ever make. You will face friction. You will feel a phantom buzz in your pocket. You will feel a sudden, irrational panic that you are missing out on something important. This is the withdrawal. It is a sign that the system is working. Troubleshooting the withdrawal. When you first implement this budget, your brain will rebel. You might experience a rebound binge. You might hold off all day, and then at 6 p.m., you fall into a scrolling coma for 4 hours. This is normal at first. To fix it, keep your evening novelty window timed. Set an alarm. Give yourself 30 minutes of guilt-free chaos, and then stop. The scarcity will make it more enjoyable. You might worry about social friction. What if your boss emails you and you don't reply for 2 hours? What if your partner texts you? The reality is that very few things are actual emergencies. Most of the urgency you feel is manufactured. Communicate your new protocol. Tell your team you are going heads down for a few hours to ship something great. Tell your family you are focusing. People respect boundaries when they are framed as a pursuit of excellence. They do not respect flakiness. Be predictable in your unavailability. You might also encounter the boredom backlash. You will hit a hard part of your work, and your brain will scream for a distraction. It will beg for just one quick check of the news. Do not give in. This is the crucible. This is the moment where your capacity expands. If you can sit in that discomfort for just 5 minutes without switching, the urge will pass, and you will drop into a deeper layer of focus than you have felt in years. The payoff. If you stick to the budget, the changes come fast. In the good scenario, you complete one solid deep work block a day. You notice that your background anxiety, that low-level hum of stress, starts to fade. You remember things better. You stop feeling like a goldfish. In the excellent scenario, the urges to switch drop by half. You feel a sense of control returning. You finish tasks in 40 minutes that used to take you 2 hours. You start to realize that you aren't slow. You were just driving with the parking brake on. In the best scenario, the unthinkable happens. You start to crave the quiet. You start to prefer the low salient state. Deep work becomes magnetized. You sit down to a blank page or a complex problem, and it feels like a sanctuary. Your creativity surges because your brain finally has the silence it needs to hear its own thoughts. You stop consuming the world and start building it. The missing piece. You have now stopped the bleeding. You have capped the noise and created the headroom for focus to exist. You have the budget, but a budget is just a potential. It is money in the bank. It does not actually buy anything until you spend it. Having a quiet environment is useless if you don't know how to initiate the work. You can sit in a silent room and still stare at the wall, paralyzed by the size of the task in front of you. You have cleared the weeds, but you haven't planted the seeds. The most dangerous moment of your day is the very beginning. There is a specific sequence of actions, a precise neural code that you must enter in the first 10 minutes of your morning. If you get this code wrong, even the best stimulation budget will fail. If you get it right, you unlock a state of momentum that makes the rest of the day feel inevitable. Most people start their day by reacting. We are going to teach you how to launch. Chapter 3, Focus Floor. The battle for your entire day is won or lost in the first 10 minutes. You know the feeling. You sit down at your desk, and before you have even opened a single file, you feel a pull. It is a subtle, nagging gravity dragging your hand toward your phone or your mouse toward the browser icon. You tell yourself you are just going to check the landscape before you dive in. You just want to see if anything urgent came in overnight. You just want to make sure the world is still spinning. So you click, you scroll, you scan. In that innocent moment, you have just destroyed your capacity for deep work for the next 4 hours. You didn't just waste time. You scrambled your neural calibration. You taught your brain that the day is going to be fast, loud, and reactive. You set the floor of your stimulation so high that the actual work you need to do, the writing, the coding, the strategizing, now looks like a boring, gray wasteland by comparison. This chapter is about fixing that entry point. We are going to build a mechanism that catches you the moment you sit down and funnels you directly into a state of high-clarity execution. We call this mechanism the focus floor. The first input rule. Your brain is a prediction machine that is constantly trying to guess what comes next. When you wake up or start your work session, your brain is looking for a signal. It is asking, what kind of day is this going to be? If your first input is a high salience spike, a social media feed, a breaking news headline, or a chaotic inbox, your brain calibrates to that level of intensity. It says, okay, today is about rapid switching and high drama. It releases a surge of dopamine to match that expectation. But here is the trap. Once you have calibrated your brain to expect high drama, it becomes chemically painful to switch to low drama work. Deep work is slow. It is quiet. It requires sustained effort without immediate applause. If you try to pivot from a high stimulation start to a low stimulation task, you will experience a massive prediction error. Your brain will scream that something is wrong. It will generate anxiety, fidgeting, and an overwhelming urge to tab switch back to the noise. To fix this, we have to control the first input. We have to set a focus floor, a baseline of low stimulation that makes the work itself feel rich and engaging. If you start your day with silence and a single task, your brain calibrates to that. It says, okay, is about steady, calm progress. When you eventually make a breakthrough in your work, that small win feels massive because the background noise is so low. By keeping the floor low, you raise the ceiling on your focus. The anti-routine. When people hear about morning routines, they usually roll their eyes, and for good reason. The productivity world is obsessed with elaborate, fragile rituals. You have seen the lists. Meditate for 20 minutes. Journal for 3 pages. Take an ice bath. Read 10 pages of Stoic philosophy. If you want to do those things for your health, fine. But do not confuse lifestyle with leverage. A long, complex morning routine is often just productive procrastination. It is a way to delay the scary part of the day, the actual work. The focus floor is not a lifestyle routine. It is a launch sequence. It is short, brutal, and effective. It should take less than 10 minutes. The goal is not to get ready to work. The goal is to be working before your brain has a chance to negotiate. We are going to strip your startup sequence down to 3 non-negotiable elements: one screen, the scan, and the launch. One screen, one tab, one plan. The environment you sit down to dictates the thoughts you will have. If you sit down to a desktop cluttered with 50 files, a browser with 20 open tabs, and a dock bouncing with notifications, you are starting in a deficit. You are asking your brain to ignore 1,000 things just to find the one thing that matters. The focus floor demands a digital clean slate. When you sit down, there should be exactly one context visible. If you are a writer, it is your document. If you are a coder, it is your IDE. If you are a designer, it is your canvas. Everything else must be hidden. Close the browser tabs. Quit the email client. Hide the dock. You want to create a visual tunnel. The only thing your eyes should be able to land on is the work itself. This visual scarcity forces mental clarity. It signals to your brain that there are no other options. There is no escape hatch. There is only the task. The meta-awareness scan. Once the environment is set, you will feel the resistance. This is inevitable. You will sit there with your single open tab, and your brain will panic. It will throw up a flare of anxiety. It will suggest that you really should check that one email thread, just in case. Most people try to fight this urge with willpower. They grit their teeth and say, "No, I must work." But fighting the urge gives it power. It creates an internal conflict that drains your energy. Instead of fighting, we're going to use a technique called the meta-awareness scan. It takes about 60 seconds. Sit in your chair, put your hands on the desk, close your eyes if you have to. Now, simply name the urge. Do not judge it. Do not argue with it. Just label it. Say to yourself, "I am feeling an urge to check my email because I am anxious about that project." Or, "I am feeling a desire to scroll because this task looks hard and I am afraid of failing." When you name the urge, you detach from it. You move from being the person feeling the urge to the person observing the urge. You flip the switch from the emotional limbic system to the rational prefrontal cortex. You realize that the urge is just a physiological sensation, like an itch. You don't have to scratch every itch. You can acknowledge it, take a breath, and let it sit there while you work. The cold start. Now comes the hardest part, the launch. You have cleared the screen. You have named the urge. Now you must begin, and you must begin cold. There is a pervasive myth that you need to warm up to deep work. You think you need to clear the decks, answer the easy emails, or organize your to-do list to build momentum. This is a lie. Clearing the decks is just a way to fill your brain with attention residue before you even start the heavy lifting. You do not need to feel ready. Feelings follow actions. You need to act, and the feelings will catch up later. The focus floor requires an immediate launch into the work. You use a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Go. You type the first sentence. You write the first line of code. You sketch the first shape. It does not matter if it is bad. It does not matter if it is clumsy. The only thing that matters is that you have crossed the threshold from potential energy to kinetic energy. Once you take that first action, the dopamine loop closes. You have exerted effort, and you have seen a result, words on a screen. Your brain gets a tiny hit of satisfaction. "Oh," it says, "we are doing this. This is where the reward comes from today." Designing your launch pad. You cannot rely on deciding to do this every morning. Decision fatigue is real, and your morning willpower is too valuable to spend on deciding how to start. You need to automate the initiation. This begins the night before. You must pre-select the slice. Never sit down at your desk asking, "What should I do today?" That question is a trap. It invites your brain to scan for the easiest, most urgent, or most stimulating option. You will end up doing busy work. Before you finish work today, define exactly what you will do first thing tomorrow. Not a vague project name like work on the report. That is too big. You need a slice. Write the introduction to the Q3 analysis. Fix the bug in the login module. Draft the 3 key arguments for the proposal. Make it small enough that you can see the finish line, but significant enough that it matters. Leave that file open on your computer so it is the first thing you see when you wake up. Next, install a start cue. This is a physical trigger that tells your body it is time to engage. It should be a simple action that you perform the exact same way every single time. Maybe it is putting on a specific pair of noise-canceling headphones. Maybe it is setting a physical timer on your desk. Maybe it is pouring a glass of water and placing it on a coaster. This cue acts like a Pavlovian bell. Over time, your brain will associate putting on those headphones with entering a state of deep focus. The resistance will begin to dissolve before you even type a word because the ritual bridges the gap. Troubleshooting the friction. You will try this and you will stumble. That is part of the process. Let's look at the common failure modes so you can spot them coming. The most common excuse is the urgent ping. You wake up and you see a notification on your lock screen that looks like a fire. Your brain screams that you have to handle it immediately. Here is the reality. 99% of urgent things can wait 60 minutes. If you react to the ping, you are letting someone else's lack of planning dictate your day. You are becoming a non-player character in your own life. Unless the building is literally burning, the focus floor takes precedence. Keep your devices on Do Not Disturb until your launch sequence is complete. If you are truly terrified of missing a genuine emergency, set up a breakthrough filter where only calls from your boss or your spouse can get through. Everything else waits. Another trap is ritual creep. You start with a simple 10-minute sequence, but then you add a stretching routine, then a reading habit, then a review of your goals. Suddenly, your launch takes 45 minutes. This is dangerous. The longer the runway, the more likely you are to crash before takeoff. Keep it ruthless. If it doesn't directly contribute to you starting the work, cut it. Finally, watch out for mood dips. You will have days where you feel sluggish, foggy, or just plain stupid. You will think, I'm not in the right headspace for deep work today. I'll just do admin. Do not believe this thought. Mood is a terrible indicator of performance. You can do exceptional work while feeling grumpy. You can write brilliant prose while feeling tired. If you feel a mood dip, use micro-movement. Stand up, do 10 push-ups. Walk to the window and look at the sky. Reset your physiology, not your inputs. Do not check Instagram to wake up. That is like drinking salt water because you are thirsty. Move your body, then sit back down and execute the launch. The identity shift. When you execute the focus floor consistently, something shifts in your self-image. You stop being the person who drags themselves through the morning, fueled by anxiety and caffeine, hoping for a burst of inspiration. You become the person who starts. You become the person who does not negotiate with their own laziness. You establish a rhythm that others begin to respect. When your team knows that you are offline and deep in the zone for the first 90 minutes of the day, they stop expecting instant replies. They start treating your time with value because you treat it with value. You will find that by 10 a.m., you have accomplished more than most people do in a week. You have banked a win. The rest of the day becomes a bonus. The anxiety that usually hangs over your head, the fear that you aren't doing enough, evaporates because you have the evidence of your effort right in front of you. The missing variable. You have lowered the noise with your stimulation budget. You have secured the perimeter with your focus floor. You are sitting there, one tab open, ready to work. But now you face a critical choice. You have the attention and you have the time. What do you actually do with it? Most people squander this golden window. They use their highest clarity moments to do medium value work. They clear their inbox, they organize files, they do the things that make them feel busy but don't actually move the needle. They burn their best fuel on a commute to nowhere. To truly wire your brain for addiction to deep work, you cannot just do any work. You have to do a specific kind of work in a specific order with a specific intensity. You have to prove to your brain that the hardest path is actually the most rewarding one. If you get this next step wrong, you will slide back into the shallows. If you get it right, you will unlock a level of leverage that feels almost unfair. It is time to look at the single most important decision you will make all day. Chapter 4, Hard First. You have been lied to about momentum. There is a seductive myth in the world of productivity that says you should ease into your day. You have heard the advice, start with a few easy wins. Clear out your inbox, reply to those 3 Slack messages, organize your desktop. The logic seems sound. You want to build a sense of accomplishment, a little snowball of productivity that will eventually roll into the big, scary projects waiting for you. This advice is not just wrong, it is dangerous. When you spend the first hour of your day clearing the decks, you are not building momentum. You are burning your best fuel on a commute to nowhere. You are teaching your brain a terrible lesson. You are teaching it that low-value, low-effort tasks are the source of your dopamine. You are wiring your neural reward system to crave the shallow and fear the deep. By the time you finally turn to the work that actually matters, the strategic plan, the complex code, the chapter of your book, you are chemically depleted. You have spent your phasic dopamine spikes on trivia. The hard work now feels twice as heavy because you have nothing left to lift it with. We are going to invert this dynamic. We're going to do the single hardest thing immediately. We're going to do it cold, without a warm-up, and without negotiation. This is not about masochism. It is about leverage. The neurology of effort. To understand why this works, you have to look at how your brain gates rewards. Your brain is an efficiency engine. It wants to get the maximum reward for the minimum effort. If you give it a choice between checking an email, low effort, instant tiny reward, and solving a complex problem, high effort, delayed reward, it will choose the email every time. But the brain is also plastic. It learns from what you feed it. If you start your day with hard work and you push through the friction to achieve a result, you trigger a massive release of phasic dopamine. This is a different quality of satisfaction than the cheap fizz of a social media like. This is the deep, resonant satisfaction of competence. When you do this repeatedly, you align your dopamine prediction error. Your brain starts to learn a new equation. Difficulty equals payoff. You begin to associate the sensation of mental strain not with pain, but with the anticipation of a major reward. You are training your striatum, the part of the brain involved in reward processing, to open the gate for deep work. This is called effort-reward coupling. You are physically wiring your neurons to enjoy the struggle, but this only happens if the effort comes first. If you put the reward, the easy stuff, before the effort, you break the coupling. You teach your brain that the reward comes from avoidance. The trap of the warm-up. Let's dismantle the warm-up excuse. You tell yourself you need to feel ready before you tackle the big project. You need to read the background material again. You need to check the metrics. You need to make sure no one is looking for you. This is not preparation. This is fear dressed up as productivity. Every minute you spend warming up is a minute where your anxiety grows. The looming task sits there, casting a shadow over your morning. The longer you wait, the larger the shadow gets. By the time you finally try to start, the resistance is so high that it feels like trying to push a boulder up a vertical wall. You do not need to feel ready. You need to start. The feeling of readiness does not precede the action. It follows the action. The strategy, the one slice. So how do you actually do this without crushing yourself under the weight of a massive project? You do not try to eat the whole elephant. You take one slice. The mistake most ambitious people make is overscoping. You sit down and say, I am going to write the proposal. That is too big. Your brain looks at that vague, massive mountain and freezes. It cannot predict a reward because it cannot see the finish line. Instead, you must define a single, isolate slice of the work. It should be something you can finish in 25 to 60 minutes. It must have a clear, binary definition of done. Work on the proposal is bad. Draft the 3 key arguments for the executive summary is good. Code the new feature is bad. Write the function that handles user authentication is good. This slice must be the thing with the highest consequence of delay. It is the thing you are most afraid of. It is the thing that if you finished it, would make the rest of the day irrelevant. The cold start protocol. Now comes the execution. You have your focus floor from the previous chapter. You have your single tab open. You have your slice defined. You are going to launch immediately. No email, no news, no just checking. You will feel resistance. Expect it. The first 10 minutes of any hard task are what I call the ugly 10. You will feel stupid. You will feel slow. Your brain will throw up every distraction it can invent. It will suddenly remind you that you need to buy toothpaste or that you forgot to text your mother. Do not be fooled. This is just the engine turning over on a cold morning. It is mechanical friction, not a sign that you are incapable. Use a countdown. Close your eyes, take a breath, and count backwards. 3, 2, 1. On 1, you physically start. You type the first word. You draw the first line. You do not wait for inspiration. You force the machine into gear. Making progress undeniable. The brain needs evidence. It needs to know that the energy it is expending is actually producing something. In the digital world, work can feel invisible. You can type for an hour and feel like you have nothing to show for it. You must make your progress visible. As you work through your slice, create a trail of breadcrumbs. If you are writing, watch the word count tick up. If you are coding, watch the commit log. If you are planning, check off the sub-items. When you finish the slice, when you hit that definition of done, you must stop and acknowledge it. This is the most critical step that high performers miss. They finish a hard task and immediately rush to the next one without pausing. They rob themselves of the neurochemical payoff. You need to savor the win. Take 60 seconds. Look at what you created. Say to yourself, I did this. I started cold and I finished. Feel the relief. Feel the capability. That feeling is the dopamine locking in the lesson. You are teaching your brain that the pain of the ugly 10 was worth it. Troubleshooting the fear. You might be reading this and thinking, but what if I fail? What if I start the hard thing and I can't do it? Perfection paralysis is the enemy of the hard first method. You are afraid to start because you are afraid the output won't be good enough. You are judging the work before it even exists. The fix is to lower the stakes. If the slice feels too scary, make it reversible. Tell yourself you are just writing a garbage draft. Tell yourself you are just running a micro test. Frame the session as data acquisition rather than performance. If you can't write the perfect paragraph, write a bad one. A bad paragraph can be edited. A blank page cannot. The goal of the hard first session is not perfection. It is existence. You are willing something into existence that wasn't there before. The identity of the finisher. When you practice hard first for a week, something shifts in your reputation, not just with others, but with yourself. You stop being the person who is always scrambling at 4 p.m. trying to salvage the day. You become the person who has already won by 10 a.m. Imagine the psychological freedom of that. You finish your hard slice. It is done. The most important thing is behind you. Now the rest of the day opens up. The emails, the meetings, the admin, they no longer carry the weight of guilt. You can handle them with a lightness of spirit because you have already paid your dues. You build a reputation for reliability. Stakeholders learn that if they give you a hard problem, you attack it. You don't sit on it. You don't procrastinate. You ship. And in a knowledge economy, the ability to ship hard things quickly is the ultimate competitive advantage. The leverage of contrast. There is a final, subtle benefit to this approach. It uses the principle of contrast to make everything else easier. If you start your day with the heaviest lift, everything that follows feels light by comparison. Answering a difficult email feels like a vacation after you've spent an hour debugging a complex algorithm. A boring meeting feels like a rest break after you've spent 60 minutes synthesizing a new strategy. By tackling the monster first, you make the rest of the villains look like toys. You move through your afternoon with a sense of downhill momentum. You are not fighting gravity, you are riding it. The missing container. You have learned to budget your stimulation. You have learned to launch your day with the focus floor. You have learned to attack the hard first. You have the start, you have the intensity, but intensity without duration is just a spark. It is not a fire. To do truly world-class work, you cannot just sprint for 40 minutes and then collapse into a heap of distraction. You need to be able to sustain this state. You need to be able to string together multiple hours of depth without burning out your neural circuitry. Most people try to extend their focus by just pushing harder. They grit their teeth and try to white-knuckle their way through a 4-hour marathon. This always fails. They crash, they burn, and they end up binge-watching Netflix for 3 days to recover. There is a better way. There is a specific architecture for time that allows you to stack effort without the crash. It involves a counterintuitive approach to pacing that feels slower but moves faster. We need to build a container that can hold your focus without leaking. Chapter 5: Deep Blocks. You are leaking. You might have mastered the art of the start. You might have successfully launched your day with a focus floor and tackled the hardest slice of work first thing in the morning. But if you are like most ambitious workers, you are unable to hold that water. You pour your energy into a sieve. You work in jagged, fractured shards of time. You work for 12 minutes, then you tab switch to check a metric. You work for another 8 minutes, then you reply to a quick message. You work for 20 minutes, then you get up to find a charger and end up cleaning your desk. You tell yourself you worked for 4 hours. In reality, you worked for a collection of scrap minutes that amount to nothing. You are confusing duration with intensity. You are confusing being busy with being deep. To move from being a frantic amateur to a disciplined professional, you need a container. You need a vessel strong enough to hold your attention without spilling a drop. We call this vessel the deep block. The physics of tonic dopamine. Most people misunderstand how their own motivation chemistry works. They think they need excitement to work. They rely on adrenaline, panic, or the thrill of a looming deadline to push them forward. This is what we call phasic dopamine, spiky, sharp, and exhausting. It is the fuel of the procrastinator. It burns hot and fast, and it leaves you charred. Sustainable deep work relies on a different fuel source. It relies on tonic dopamine. Think of phasic dopamine as a lightning strike, and tonic dopamine as the hum of a high-voltage power line. Tonic dopamine is steady. It is the background level of drive that supports continuous attention. When your tonic levels are stable, you don't need a crisis to focus. You don't need a new notification to feel alive. You can simply inhabit the work. The problem with your current workflow is that every time you switch contexts, you kill your tonic levels. When you interrupt a complex task to check a simple one, you are not multitasking. You are crashing your system. You are introducing attention residue, a cognitive sludge that sticks to your neurons and slows down your processing speed. We are going to build a structure that protects your tonic dopamine. We are going to create a sanctuary where the only thing that exists is the task at hand. This is not about willpower. It is about geometry. We are shaping your time into blocks that are impossible to break. The single-threaded rule. The first law of the deep block is exclusivity. A deep block is a period of 45 to 120 minutes dedicated to exactly one outcome. This sounds simple, but you will try to cheat. You will tell yourself that you can have your main project open in one window and your email open in another, just in case. You will tell yourself that listening to a podcast while you code is fine. It is not fine, it is failure. The human brain cannot parallel process complex tasks. It can only rapid switch. And as we discussed, rapid switching is the enemy of depth. For a deep block to work, you must be single-threaded, one monitor, one application, one goal. If you are writing, the internet is off. If you are analyzing data, the chat app is quit. You must create a digital vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum, and your brain will rush to fill that silence with deep thought. If you leave the noise in, your brain will latch onto the noise. This exclusivity acts as an anti-switching shield. When you remove the option to switch, you remove the decision fatigue of constantly resisting the urge to switch. You feel calmer because the menu of options has been reduced to one. You are either working or you are staring at the screen waiting to work. There is no third door. The art of the boring break. Here is where most people ruin their momentum. You successfully work for 50 minutes. You feel the fatigue setting in. You decide to take a break. So you pick up your phone. You scroll through social media. You read the news. You text a friend. You have just destroyed the block. You think you are resting, but you are actually blasting your brain with high salience novelty. You are introducing a massive prediction error. You are taking a brain that was humming along in a deep tonic state and shocking it with a phasic spike of cheap entertainment. When you try to go back to work 5 minutes later, the work feels dull. It feels gray. You have ruined your palate. A proper break inside a deep block must be boring. It must be low stimulation. When the timer goes off, you stand up, you stretch, you look out a window, you stare at a blank wall. You breathe. You do not look at a screen. You do not input new information. You allow the dust to settle. These low stimulation breaks prevent depletion without breaking the spell. They allow your working memory to refresh without flushing the context of the problem you are solving. You are keeping the engine running while you refuel. If you check your phone, you turn the engine off and you have to cold start it all over again. Designing the container. You cannot just sit down and hope for a deep block to happen. You have to engineer it. Start by choosing your duration. If you are new to this, do not try to be a hero. Do not attempt a 2-hour block on day 1. You will crash. Start with 50 minutes. This is enough time to get past the initial friction and find a rhythm, but short enough that the finish line is visible. Set the container physically. Put your phone in another room or in a drawer. Turn on Do Not Disturb. Put on noise-canceling headphones. These are not just functional tools, they are ritual objects. They signal to your body that you are entering the containment zone. Use a visible timer. A countdown clock on your screen or a physical timer on your desk creates a temporal container. It offloads the work of timekeeping from your brain. You don't have to wonder how long you have been working or how much longer you have to go. The timer knows you are free to get lost. The first 5 script. The hardest part of any block is the first 3 minutes. This is where the drift happens. You sit down, the timer starts, and you suddenly feel unsure of where to begin. You stare at the cursor. You feel the urge to check something just to get your bearings. To prevent this, use the first 5 script. Before you start the timer, write down the first 5 tiny actions you will take. Not write chapter, but 1. Open document. 2. Reread last paragraph. 3. Write header for new section. 4. Paste in research notes. 5. Write first sentence. This script greases the wheels. It removes the friction of decision-making from the launch. You are not deciding what to do. You are simply following instructions you gave yourself. By the time you finish step 5, you are already in motion. The tonic dopamine loop has begun. Troubleshooting the drift. Even with the best container, your mind will wander. You will be 30 minutes into a block, and you will have a sudden, brilliant idea for a different project. Or you will remember that you need to buy a birthday gift. The amateur stops working to chase the idea or handle the task. The professional uses a later list. Keep a physical notepad next to your keyboard. When an intruder thought arrives, whether it is a genius idea or a mundane chore, capture it on the pad. Get it out of your head and onto the paper. Then, immediately return to the block. This act of capturing closes the open loop. Your brain can relax because it knows the thought is safe. It doesn't have to keep spinning it in working memory. You have acknowledged the signal without obeying the impulse to switch contexts. If you find yourself crashing in the afternoon, your blocks are likely too long or your pacing is too aggressive. Shorten the block by 10 minutes. Tighten the container. It is better to have 3 intense 40-minute blocks than 1 sloppy 2-hour block that dissolves into browsing. The savoring closure. How you end the block is just as important as how you start it. Most people work until they are interrupted or until they simply can't take it anymore. They close the laptop in a state of exhaustion and immediately rush to the next crisis. This is a wasted opportunity. You need to teach your brain that the effort was worth it. You need to manually close the dopamine loop. When the timer hits 0, do not just stand up. Take 60 seconds for a savoring closure. Look at the work you did, scroll through the code, read the words, look at the checked boxes. Say to yourself, I did this, I held the focus. Then, write down a context bookmark. This is a note to your future self about exactly where you left off and what the very next step is. Finish the data cleaning. Next step, run the regression analysis on column B. This bookmark eliminates the fear of stopping. You know that you can pick up exactly where you left off tomorrow without any friction. You are building a bridge across the night. The magnetism of depth. When you execute deep blocks consistently, a strange thing happens. The work starts to feel magnetized. In the beginning, you are pushing. You are using the structure to force yourself to focus. But after a few days, the dynamic inverts. The tonic dopamine levels rise. The lack of switching reduces the noise in your head. You start to crave the silence of the block. You will find that you are most calm when you are deep. The anxiety of the world falls away because there is no room for it in the container. You are not just being productive, you are being peaceful. You will start to see the results in your output. You will ship complex deliverables in a week that used to take a month. You will solve problems that have stumped you for quarters. You will realize that you haven't been lacking intelligence. You have been lacking continuity. The missing paycheck. You have the budget, you have the floor, you have the hard start, you have the deep block, you are now doing the work, you are generating massive value. But there is a danger here. If you rely solely on the intrinsic satisfaction of the work, you might eventually burn out. Your primitive brain, the lizard brain that drives your deepest impulses, is transactional. It wants to get paid. If you work hard and the only reward is more work, your inner lizard will eventually rebel. It will go on strike. It will demand the cheap dopamine of the scroll because at least that pays out immediately. To make this addiction permanent, we have to hijack the payment system. We have to design a compensation package for your brain that is so compelling, so precise, and so satisfying that your lizard brain becomes your biggest ally. We need to stop hoping for satisfaction and start engineering it. You are about to learn how to print your own currency. Chapter 6, Reward Engine. You are a terrible boss. If you treated an employee the way you treat your own brain, you would be sued for labor violations. You demand high performance. You demand intense focus. You demand that the work be done perfectly and immediately. And when the work is done, what do you give your brain in return? Nothing. You give it more work. You finish a grueling 2-hour block of deep concentration, and instead of pausing to acknowledge the effort, you immediately open your inbox to see what else is on fire. You rush from one obligation to the next, breathless and frantic, assuming that your brain should just keep outputting value out of a sense of moral duty. This is why you are burning out. Your brain is not a moral agent, it is a biological mercenary. It works for payment. It calculates the return on investment for every calorie of energy it spends. If you consistently demand high effort but provide zero reward, your brain eventually goes on strike. It stops releasing the neurochemicals required for focus because it has learned that focus is a bad deal. It learns that hard work leads only to fatigue, while distraction leads to relief. We are going to fire the tyrant and hire a strategist. We are going to build a reward engine. This is a system that pays you for your labor, not with vague promises of future success, but with immediate, tangible neurochemical currency. We are going to teach you how to hijack your own reward circuitry so that the hard work becomes the most addictive thing you do. The mercenary logic of the brain. To understand why you need a formal reward system, you have to accept a cold truth about human biology. The nervous system repeats what is reinforced. This is the fundamental law of behaviorism. If an action is followed by a positive outcome, the probability of that action happening again increases. If it is followed by a neutral or negative outcome, the probability decreases. Most ambitious people break this law every day. They invert the equation. They take the reward, the scroll through Instagram, the episode of the TV show, the video game, and they consume it before the work. They use it to procrastinate. They try to pay themselves in advance, hoping that the guilt of the unearned pleasure will drive them to work later. This is a disaster. When you reward yourself before the effort, you sever the link between the work and the pleasure. You teach your brain that the way to get dopamine is to avoid the task. Then, when you finally force yourself to work, you are doing it in a state of dopamine depletion. You are slogging through the mud. The reward engine flips this dynamic. We are going to install a strict protocol where payment only happens after the effort. We are going to use precision timing to weld the feeling of satisfaction directly to the act of finishing a block. We are going to turn your dopamine system from a saboteur into a generator. The currency of micro rewards. The first layer of the engine is the micro reward. These are not grand vacations or expensive purchases. Those are too slow. We need speed. We need something that can happen immediately after you finish a deep block, while the sweat is still on your brow. A micro reward is a tiny, low stimulation packet of pleasure. It needs to be something that signals to your brain that the hunt is over and the feast has begun. But, and this is critical, it cannot be a high salience hijack. If your reward for finishing a block is to dive into a chaotic social media feed, you undo the calm focus you just built. You shock your system. Think smaller. Think subtler. A micro reward might be stepping outside to feel the sun on your face for 2 minutes. It might be listening to one specific song that you love, but only allow yourself to hear after a win. It might be a few minutes of reading a fiction book. It might be a physical stretch that releases the tension in your shoulders. The specific content of the reward matters less than the timing. It must happen within seconds of the timer going off. You close the laptop and boom, you trigger the reward. This tight temporal coupling is what teaches the brain the lesson. The brain goes, "Ah, that intense effort I just expended, that caused this nice feeling." Over time, the brain starts to anticipate the nice feeling as soon as you start the work. The work itself begins to take on the glow of the coming reward. The casino effect. If you give yourself the exact same reward every single time, it eventually stops working. The brain habituates. It gets bored. This is why slot machines are more addictive than vending machines. A vending machine is predictable. A slot machine is variable. We are going to turn your productivity into a casino. This is the concept of variable reinforcement. You should not celebrate every single win with a parade. That breeds tolerance. Instead, you want to introduce an element of randomness to your milestones. Maybe you set a rule that you will celebrate a milestone after every 3 to 5 deep blocks, but you don't know exactly which one it will be. You roll a die. If it hits a 6, you get a slightly larger reward, a longer break, a call to a friend, a browse through a favorite hobby site. This unpredictability keeps the dopamine system on high alert. It keeps the seeking circuit active. Your brain remains engaged because it never quite knows when the jackpot is coming, so it keeps pulling the lever. It keeps doing the work. You are using the same psychological tricks that gambling designers use to bankrupt you, but you are using them to bankrupt your laziness. The art of bundling. Now we tackle the heavy artillery. You have things in your life that you love to do, but that are currently destroying your focus. The video games, the streaming series, the hours falling down internet rabbit holes. Currently, these are your enemies. They are the distractions that pull you away from depth. We are going to turn these enemies into your strongest allies through a technique called reward bundling. The rule is absolute. You are no longer allowed to consume your favorite high dopamine activities whenever you want. They are now locked behind a gate. The only key to that gate is the completion of your daily deep work quota. If you want to watch that show, you must finish your 3 deep blocks. If you finish them, you can watch it guilt-free. In fact, you must watch it. You must indulge fully. But if you miss your blocks, the gate stays closed. No exceptions. This creates a powerful reward deferral gradient. You are leveraging your desire for the distraction to drive the focus. You are not suppressing your vices, you are harnessing them. Suddenly, the urge to watch Netflix isn't a distraction. It's the fuel that pushes you through the last 20 minutes of a difficult report. You are working for the show. The savoring protocol. There is one final component to the engine, and it is the most important one because it requires no external tools. It is the internal act of savoring. Most high performers have a next addiction. As soon as they finish a task, they are already mentally moving to the next one. They rob themselves of the satisfaction of completion. They treat their wins like they don't exist. You must stop doing this. You must learn to manually trigger a phasic dopamine release through conscious attention. When you finish a block, before you stand up, before you grab your micro reward, Take 60 seconds to just sit there. Look at the work, look at the word count, look at the code, look at the plan, and then say it. Say it out loud or say it in your head. I did this, I struggled, and I won. Force yourself to feel the pride. Force yourself to feel the relief. You are manually stamping the memory of success into your hippocampus. You are highlighting the neural pathway that links effort to pleasure. If you skip this step, you are doing the work, but throwing away the receipt. Savoring is how you cash the check. Troubleshooting the engine. As you implement this, you will face glitches. The most common is reward creep. You will tell yourself, I did pretty good work. I'll just take the reward now, even though I didn't finish the last 10 minutes. Do not do this. The moment you decouple the reward from the strict completion of the task, the entire system collapses. The brain is smart. If it realizes it can get the payment without the labor, it will stop doing the labor. You must be ruthless. If you don't do the work, you don't get the reward. The deprivation is just as important as the indulgence. The hunger makes the next meal taste better. You might also face tolerance. If your micro-rewards stop feeling good, rotate them. Novelty is a key component of reward. Change the song, change the stretch, change the fiction book. Keep the menu fresh so the brain stays interested. And finally, watch out for guilt. Some of you have been conditioned to believe that rest is a sin. You feel bad when you stop to enjoy a reward. You feel like you should be doing more. This guilt is a glitch. It is a malfunction. Recovery is part of performance. A Formula One car cannot win the race if it never stops for tires. Your rewards are the pit stops. They are not time wasted. They are speed gained. The missing horizon. You now have a system that works beautifully for the day-to-day. You can sit down, grind through a hard block, and pay yourself with a micro reward. You can finish a solid day and bundle your evening relaxation. You are becoming a machine of daily execution. But there is a flaw in this engine. It is designed for short-term loops. It works for tasks that take an hour or a day. What happens when the goal is so big that you can't see the finish line? What happens when you are working on a project that won't ship for 6 months? What happens when the reward is so delayed that your primitive brain can't even imagine it? Daily micro-rewards are not enough to sustain you through the desert of a long-term mission. For that, you need a different kind of psychology. You need to bend time. You need to trick your brain into feeling the future as if it were happening right now. If you don't learn this next skill, you will be the most productive person in the world who never actually finishes anything big. Chapter 7, Delay Mastery. The graveyard of ambition is not located at the starting line. Most people have no trouble starting. The start is exciting. The start is filled with the cheap dopamine of possibility. You buy the domain name, you write the first chapter, you sketch the logo, you feel like a conqueror because the dream is fresh and the resistance hasn't shown up yet. The graveyard is located in the middle. It is located in week 3 or month 2 or year 1. It is that vast, silent desert between the initial excitement of the launch and the distant applause of the finish line. This is where the project stops being fun and starts being work. This is where the newness wears off and the daily grind sets in. You have likely been there. You started a project with fire in your belly, but 3 weeks later, you found yourself bargaining. You started questioning if it was worth it. You started looking for a new idea, a fresh start, a different path. You abandoned the gold mine when you were 3 feet from the ore because you got tired of swinging the pickaxe without seeing a sparkle. This is not a character flaw, it is a cognitive bias. Your brain is hardwired to discount the future. It values a small reward today infinitely more than a massive reward next month. This mechanism, known as delay discounting, is the reason you quit. To become a master of deep work, you cannot just win the morning. You have to win the month. You have to win the quarter. You need to learn how to bridge the gap between the effort you expend today and the payoff that might not arrive for 100 days. You need to master the art of the delay. The time travel problem. Your brain is a terrible time traveler. To your primitive survival circuitry, The future is a theoretical concept, but the present is a visceral reality. When you face a choice between doing deep work now for a reward that comes in 6 months or slacking off now for a reward that comes instantly, your brain does the math and screams for the instant hit. The further away the reward is, the less it is worth to your brain. This is why you can be intellectually committed to writing a book, but emotionally committed to watching television. The book is a year away. The television is right there. If you rely on willpower to bridge this gap, you will fail. Willpower is a battery, and a long-term project is a marathon. You cannot sprint a marathon. The only way to solve this is to trick the brain. We have to make the future feel closer than it actually is. We have to pull the horizon toward us. We do this not by fantasizing about the result, but by manufacturing intermediate evidence. We are going to build a bridge of concrete proofs that allow your dopamine system to cross the valley of death without starving. Locking the cockpit door. The first step to conquering time is to remove the option to abort. Every day you wake up and ask yourself, should I keep working on this project? You are paying a tax. You are spending cognitive energy to remake a decision you already made. This constant reevaluation is fatal. It opens the door for doubt. It allows your current mood to vote on your long-term plans. If you are a pilot flying a plane across the ocean, you do not wake up over the Atlantic and ask, should I turn back? You are committed to the flight plan. You are in the air. The decision was made on the ground. You need to implement a runway commitment. Before you start a major phase of work, you define the runway. You say, I am committing to this protocol for 8 weeks, or 12 weeks, or 6 weeks. The duration matters less than the contract. During those 8 weeks, you are not allowed to judge the project. You are not allowed to pivot. You are not allowed to quit. You have locked the cockpit door. You are simply executing the flight plan. This creates decision relief. When the work gets hard in week 4, and your brain starts whining that maybe this isn't the right path, you can simply point to the contract. We can discuss this in week 9, you tell your brain, but right now, we are flying. By removing the option to quit, you redirect that nervous energy into execution. The chain of evidence. Once you are locked in, you need to feed the beast. Your brain needs to see that you are moving. In the absence of a finished product, you need a proxy for progress. This is where the streak comes in. You have heard of this, but you are likely underestimating its power. Get a physical calendar or a dedicated tracking sheet. Every day that you complete your deep work quota, you mark a big visible X on that day. This sounds childish. It is not. It is a visual representation of your consistency. It is a chain of evidence. When you look at a calendar with 15 X's in a row, you are looking at proof of your new identity. You are looking at a winning streak. Your brain hates breaking patterns. The longer the chain grows, the more painful it becomes to break it. You start doing the work not just for the long-term goal, but to protect the chain. Use the 2-day rule to keep the chain alive. We are humans, not robots. You will get sick. You will have emergencies. You will miss a day. That is acceptable, but you are never, under any circumstances, allowed to miss 2 days in a row. Missing 1 day is a stumble. Missing 2 days is the beginning of a new habit, the habit of quitting. If you miss a day, the priority for the next day becomes absolute. You must mark the X. This rule prevents a bad day from turning into a bad month. Manufacturing checkpoints. Streaks are good for daily motivation, but they don't tell you if you are actually getting anywhere. You can run on a treadmill for a year and never leave your basement. To sustain a long arc, you need to see that you are moving forward. You need checkpoints. A long project without checkpoints is a recipe for despair. It is like driving in the fog. You know you are moving, but you don't know where you are. Every 1 to 2 weeks, you must define a proof of progress. This is not just a task you checked off. It is an artifact. It is something you can look at, read, or test. It is a chapter draft. It is a working prototype. It is a completed data set. These checkpoints serve as intermediate finish lines. They allow you to spike your dopamine levels on a regular schedule. Instead of waiting 6 months for the big payoff, you get a medium payoff every Friday. When you hit a checkpoint, celebrate it. This is where you use the variable reinforcement we discussed in the previous chapter. Take the afternoon off, buy the good coffee, acknowledge the win. You are teaching your brain that the project is not a bottomless pit of effort, but a series of climbable steps. The language of arcs. How you talk to yourself about time changes how you experience it. Amateurs talk about the grind. They talk about someday. Professionals talk in arcs. Start framing your work in terms of the current horizon. I am in week 3 of the 8-week sprint. I am closing out the alpha phase. This language does 2 things. First, it creates a sense of scarcity. Week 3 is going to end, and you want to get the most out of it. Second, it normalizes the middle. When you know you are in the middle of an arc, you expect it to feel like work. You don't panic because you aren't finished yet. You aren't supposed to be finished. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. This reduces the day-to-day drama. A bad Tuesday doesn't mean the project is doomed. It just means it was a tough day in week 4. You zoom out. You look at the arc, not the hour. Troubleshooting the dip. Even with runways and streaks, you will hit the dip. This is the moment when the novelty is completely gone, the finish line is still invisible, and the work feels impossible. When this happens, your brain will try to trick you. It will tell you that you are bored. It will tell you that the idea is bad. It will tell you that you should check your metrics to see how things are going. Do not check the metrics. External feedback is a trap during the dip. If the numbers are bad, you will be discouraged. If the numbers are good, you will become complacent. Instead, shorten your horizon. If an 8-week view feels too heavy, zoom into the 24-hour view. Forget the finish line. Forget the checkpoint. Just look at the streak. Can you put an X on today? That is the only question that matters. If you are paralyzed by the size of the remaining work, use the next step seed. At the end of your work session, write down the very first tiny thing you need to do tomorrow. Open file. Reread paragraph 4. Plant the seed. When you sit down the next morning, you don't have to think. You just have to water the seed. You lower the activation energy required to start, and before you know it, you are moving again. The pre-mortem light. There is a final tool for mastering delay, and it involves looking at failure before it happens. Most people prefer not to think about what could go wrong. They rely on optimism, but optimism is fragile. When a surprise obstacle hits, the optimist shatters. The master uses a pre-mortem. Before you start your runway, ask yourself, if this project fails in 3 weeks, what killed it? Be honest. Was it your social life? Was it a specific distraction? Was it a lack of clarity? List the top 3 assassins of your focus. Then create an if-then countermove for each one. If I get invited to a dinner during my deep work block, then I will automatically say no. If I get stuck on a technical problem for more than an hour, then I will switch to documentation for the rest of the day. By rehearsing the failure, you disarm it. When the obstacle inevitably appears, you don't panic, you recognize it. Ah, you say, I was expecting you. You execute the countermove and keep flying. The shift to finisher. When you practice delay mastery, you stop being a starter. You become a finisher. There is a profound confidence that comes from knowing you can outlast your own impulses. You look at a massive goal, writing a book, building a company, learning a language, and you don't feel overwhelmed. You see the runway, you see the checkpoints, you see the chain of evidence. You realize that the middle is not a place to suffer. It is the place where the value is created. It is the forge. You stop needing constant applause. You stop needing the world to tell you that you are doing a good job every 5 minutes. You have your own receipts. You have the X's on the wall. You have the artifacts in the folder. You have the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you are moving forward. The internal stabilizer. You have built the daily loop. You have extended the horizon. You have a system that can handle the work and the time. But there is one variable we haven't controlled yet. It is the most volatile variable of all. It is the one that lives inside your chest. You can have the perfect schedule, the perfect budget, and the perfect plan, and still be derailed by a sudden, violent swing in your own emotional state. You can wake up feeling a level of anxiety or apathy that no checklist can fix. You can be hijacked by a compulsion so strong it feels like a physical command. To make this system bulletproof, we need to install a shock absorber. We need to stabilize the drive itself so that your motivation doesn't look like a heart attack monitor, spiking and flatlining, but like a steady, powerful wave. We need to stop the oscillation. Chapter 8, Stable Drive. You are an emotional day trader. Look at the graph of your motivation over the last 6 months. It probably looks like the stock chart of a volatile cryptocurrency. You have weeks where you feel like a god, burning with manic energy, crushing to-do lists, and staying up late to ship projects. You feel unstoppable. You tell yourself that you have finally figured it out. Then, inevitably, the crash comes. You wake up one Tuesday and the fire is gone. You feel heavy. You feel gray. You spend the next 3 weeks in a slump, doing the bare minimum to avoid getting fired, hating yourself for your lack of discipline, and waiting for the lightning to strike again. This boom and bust cycle is not a strategy, it is a pathology. You cannot build a career, a legacy, or a masterpiece on the back of manic spikes. Volatility is the enemy of compounding. If you gain 50% one week and lose 40% the next, you are barely moving. You are just exhausting yourself. We need to stop relying on the adrenaline of the spike and start cultivating the power of the hum. We need to stabilize your drive. We are going to engineer a state of motivation that doesn't scream, but whispers constantly. We are going to lower the volatility of your operating system so that doing the work stops being a heroic event and starts being your default setting. The myth of intensity. There is a dangerous lie in the high-performance world that says you need to be pumped up to work. You see it in the motivational videos, the yelling, the sweating, the intense music. It sells the idea that productivity is a high arousal state. This is biologically unsustainable. High arousal burns expensive metabolic fuel. It relies on phasic dopamine spikes, those sharp, sudden bursts of neurochemistry that feel exciting but fade instantly. If you build a workflow that requires you to be excited, you are building a workflow that is guaranteed to fail. True professionals are boring. If you watch a master surgeon, a prolific writer, or a top-tier coder at work, it doesn't look like a montage. It looks calm. It looks steady. They are running on tonic dopamine. This is the background hum of motivation that sustains attention over long periods without the crash. Your goal is not to feel motivated. Your goal is to feel stable. You want to migrate your hedonic set point, your baseline for what feels normal, downward towards serenity. When your baseline is calm, the work doesn't need to be a thrill ride to be engaging. It just needs to be the work. The weekly input audit. The first step to stabilization is managing the noise that creeps back into your life. You might have set a stimulation budget in Chapter 2, but entropy is real. Chaos always increases. New apps appear, new group chats form, new anxieties emerge. If you do not actively weed your garden, the weeds will take over. You need a weekly input audit. Every Sunday, take 10 minutes to look at your digital environment with cold, clinical eyes. Identify the single biggest source of high-stimulation noise that crept in during the last 7 days. Maybe you started checking a news site again. Maybe you got sucked into a Twitter argument. Maybe you downloaded a game just to relax, and now you are playing it for an hour a night. Kill it. You must remove one high-stimulation source every single week. This is not about deprivation. It is about protecting your baseline. If you let the noise floor rise, your stability collapses. At the same time, add one calming cue. This is a small environmental tweak that signals safety and focus to your brain. Move your desk to face a window. Buy a warmer light bulb. Clean the clutter off your shelf. These small, analog signals help anchor your set point in the physical world, making it harder for the digital chaos to hijack your mood. The art of urge labeling. Even with a clean environment, the instability will come from inside the house. You will be in the middle of a deep block, and suddenly, out of nowhere, you will feel a compulsion. It will feel like an itch in the center of your brain. You will have a sudden, desperate need to check your email, or get a snack, or look up a random fact. Most people handle this in one of two ways. They either obey the urge immediately, the amateur move, or they try to suppress it with white-knuckled willpower, the burnout move. Suppression backfires. When you try to wrestle an urge into submission, you give it energy. You enter a tug-of-war with your own limbic system. Even if you win, you lose because you have spent your cognitive resources on the fight rather than the work. There is a third way. It is called urge labeling. When the urge hits, you do not fight it, you do not obey it, you simply name it. You say to yourself, I am experiencing an urge to check my phone. Then you wait 90 seconds. Neuroscience tells us that the chemical lifespan of an emotional compulsion is roughly 90 seconds. It is a wave. It rises, it crests, and if you do not feed it, it breaks and recedes. Your job is to be the surfer, not the wave. Watch the urge rise, feel the discomfort. It might feel physical, a tightness in the chest, a twitch in the fingers. That is fine. It is just data. Label it. There is the tightness, there is the desire. Do not negotiate with it. Just watch it. After about a minute and a half, you will feel the tension dissolve. The chemicals flush out of your system. You return to the task. Every time you do this, you weaken the neural pathway of distraction and strengthen the pathway of stability. You are training your brain that an urge is a suggestion, not a command. Variability without chaos. Stability does not mean rigidity. If your routine is too brittle, it will snap the moment life throws a curveball. If you do the exact same thing every day for a year, you risk a different kind of failure. Boredom. The brain needs a tiny amount of novelty to stay engaged. If the tonic dopamine drops too low, you fall asleep at the wheel. We need to introduce controlled variability. Think of this like a chef tweaking a recipe. The core structure remains the same, but the spices change. Rotate your block length slightly. If you usually do 60 minutes, try doing 90 minutes for a week, then drop back to 45. Change the specific ritual you use to start your day once a month. If you always listen to classical music, switch to ambient rain sounds. This micro-variability keeps the system fresh without introducing the chaos of high-salience distraction. You are giving your brain just enough newness to pay attention, but not enough to derail the train. You are refreshing the flavor without changing the ingredients. The 2-day rule. There is one tactical rule that saves more careers than any other. It is the safety net beneath your tightrope. The 2-day rule. You are allowed to have a bad day. You are allowed to miss your deep work blocks because you have the flu, or your car broke down, or you simply fell apart. That is human. But you are never, ever allowed to miss 2 days in a row. One missed day is an outlier. 2 missed days is a new habit. When you miss a day, the stakes for the next day double. You must get back to the baseline immediately. It doesn't matter if the work is ugly. It doesn't matter if you only do 20 minutes. You must re-engage the system. This rule stops the tailspin. Most long-term failures don't happen because of one catastrophe. They happen because one slip turned into a week of sliding, which turned into a month of apathy. The 2-day rule acts as a hard floor. It catches you before you can fall into the abyss. The trap of feeling flat. As you implement this, you are going to experience a sensation that will scare you. You are going to feel flat. You will sit down to work, and you won't feel the manic excitement you used to feel. You won't feel the adrenaline. You will just feel normal. Your brain, addicted to the spikes of the past, will interpret this flatness as failure. It will tell you, I'm not motivated today. I don't have the spark. Do not listen. This flatness is not a lack of motivation. It is the presence of stability. It is the feeling of a regulated nervous system. This is what professional execution feels like. It is calm. It is quiet. It is undramatic. Flow often starts in neutral. You don't enter a flow state by being hyper-excited. You enter it by being steadily attentive. When you feel flat, trust the system. Start the block. You will find that within 10 minutes, that flatness transforms into a deep, rich immersion that is infinitely more productive than your old manic energy. The stability score. You need to measure this. You cannot manage what you do not track. At the end of each week, give yourself a stability score from 1 to 5. A 1 means you were all over the place, manic highs, depressive lows, total chaos. A 5 means you were a machine, steady, predictable, calm. Look at the weeks where you scored a 2 or a 3. What happened? Did you let a high-stimulation video game back into your life? Did you stop doing the urge labeling? Did you skip the focus floor? Look for the trigger patterns. Volatility always has a cause. Usually it is a hidden spike, a source of cheap dopamine that you thought was harmless but is actually destabilizing your entire week. Find it. Gate it. The identity of the finisher. When you run this stable drive for a month, the most important shift occurs. It is not in your output, though that will double. It is in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as a person who struggles to focus. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of your own whims. You start seeing yourself as a consistent finisher. You become the person who shows up. You become the person who can be relied upon. This shift in self-image is the ultimate stabilizer. When you believe you are consistent, you act consistently. The effort stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like home base. You stop negotiating with yourself because the outcome is not in doubt. You know you are going to do the work. The only question is how much. The final integration. You have cleaned the noise. You have built the morning launch pad. You have learned to eat the hard frog first. You have contained your focus in deep blocks. You have engineered a reward system that pays you for effort. You have extended your horizon to handle long projects. And now you have stabilized the drive to prevent burnout. You have all the components of a high-performance engine. You have the fuel, the pistons, the transmission, and the cooling system. But an engine sitting on a garage floor is useless. It needs to be put into a vehicle, and that vehicle needs to be driven. You need to take these separate parts and weld them into a single, seamless flywheel that runs automatically. You need a way to make this entire system disappear so that you are no longer doing the system, you are just living it. We need to fuse these 7 chapters into a lifestyle that requires zero conscious thought to maintain. It is time to close the loop. It is time to make the focus forever. Chapter 9, Forever Focus. You are holding a blueprint for a different kind of life. When you started this book, you were likely looking for a hack. You wanted a trick to stop scrolling, a method to answer emails faster, or a way to force yourself to do work you hated. You were looking for a Band-Aid to put over a bullet hole. What you found instead was a complete reconstruction of your neural architecture. We didn't just patch the leaks, we rebuilt the engine. We took a brain that was addicted to the cheap, frantic spikes of digital novelty and rewired it to crave the slow, deep burn of difficult effort. This final chapter is not about adding more tools to your belt. You have enough tools. You have the budget, the floor, the blocks, and the engine. This chapter is about welding those tools together into a single seamless flywheel that runs on its own. It is about moving from doing deep work to being a deep worker. This is where the discipline stops feeling heavy and starts feeling like flight. The 7-part flywheel. Let's look at the machine you have built. It is not a random collection of tips. It is a closed loop, a self-reinforcing system where every step powers the next. It starts with the stimulation budget. You lower the noise floor. You refuse to let the world bankrupt your attention before you even begin. By keeping your baseline low, you create the silence necessary for the signal to be heard. Then, you step onto the focus floor. You stop hoping for a good morning and you engineer one. You use a precise, low-stimulation launch sequence to prime your brain for clarity, avoiding the early spikes that lead to a midday crash. You immediately attack the hard first. You take the scariest thing on your plate and you eat it cold. You teach your brain the most important lesson of all, that effort predicts reward. You flip the prediction error in your favor. You contain this effort in deep blocks. You stop leaking energy into the cracks of multitasking. You build a sanctuary of single-threaded focus where attention residue cannot survive. You ignite the reward engine. You stop working for free. You pay yourself with micro-rewards and bundled pleasures, but only after the sweat is on the brow. You hijack your own lizard brain to work for you, not against you. You extend your vision with delay mastery. You use streaks and checkpoints to bridge the gap between today's labor and next year's triumph. You stop discounting the future because you have made the progress visible. Finally, you lock it in with stable drive. You smooth out the volatility. You label your urges, audit your inputs, and turn motivation from a manic spike into a steady hum. When you run this loop once, it is hard. When you run it for a week, it is work. But when you run it for a month, it becomes a flywheel. The momentum of the last cycle pushes you into the next. You stop needing to push the wheel, you just have to keep your hand on it to steer. The agency of the architect. The result of this system is not just productivity. Productivity is a boring word for a boring goal. Productivity is about doing more things. We are after something much higher, agency. When you master dopamine loading, you regain sovereignty over your own consciousness. Most people today are not the pilots of their own lives. They are passengers. They are strapped into a seat, being flown by algorithms designed to harvest their attention for ad revenue. They go where the feed takes them. They feel what the news tells them to feel. You are different. You decide when to spike. You decide what is worth your attention. You decide the horizon. This agency gives you massive professional leverage. While your peers are drowning in shallow work, frantically responding to every ping to prove they are busy, you are quietly building assets. You are writing the code that automates the job. You are writing the strategy that changes the company. You are doing the deep thinking that requires a calm mind. In a knowledge economy, the ability to think deeply is the rarest currency. By hoarding this currency, you become undeniable. Deadlines stop feeling like cliffs you're falling off. They become targets you calmly snipe from a distance. Your reputation shifts from responsive to reliable. The relationship dividend. There is a hidden benefit to this system that we haven't discussed, and it might be the most valuable one of all. Deep work makes you a better human being to the people you love. There is a myth that high performers are cold and distant. The opposite is true. The scattered, overstimulated amateur is the one who is distant. They are the ones checking their phone under the dinner table. They are the ones who are physically in the room, but mentally scrolling through Twitter. They are irritable because they are constantly coming down from a dopamine spike. When you practice deep work, you learn to compartmentalize. You have a block for work, and you have a block for life. When you are in the work block, you are unreachable. But when you step out of that block, you are fully present. You bring the same quality of attention to your conversation with your partner that you brought to your project. You are not looking for a distraction because your dopamine needs have been met. You have done the hard thing. You have earned the calm. You have the emotional bandwidth to listen, to care, and to be there because you aren't fighting a background war with your own impulses. The migration to serenity. If you stick with this, a profound biological shift occurs. We call it set point migration. Right now, deep work probably feels like effort. It feels like you are swimming upstream. That is because your hedonic set point is still calibrated to the high stimulation world. But as you lower the noise and reinforce the effort, your baseline shifts. The boring work stops feeling boring. It starts to feel rich. You begin to notice the texture of the problem you are solving. You start to find a quiet joy in the logic of the code or the rhythm of the sentence. The cravings fade. You stop reflexively reaching for your phone because the phone offers a chaotic, jagged buzz that you no longer enjoy. You start to prefer the clarity of the deep state. This is the identity flywheel. You stop saying, I am trying to focus. You start saying, I am a finisher. The habits require less push because they are no longer something you do, they are something you are. This leads to strategic lightness. The work doesn't get smaller, but the weight of it disappears. You can carry a heavier load because you have built a stronger back. You achieve more with less drama. You stop grinding and start gliding. The first step. You have read the book. You understand the theory. You see the path. But reading is a passive act. Reading is low salience consumption. It feels like work, but it is not work. It is safe. The danger right now is that you will close this book, feel a warm glow of inspiration, and then go check your email. If you do that, you have learned nothing. You have just consumed another piece of entertainment. You need to break the seal. You need to prove to your brain right now that this is not just another idea. Here is your immediate protocol. First, define tomorrow's one slice. Do not go to sleep until you have written it down. I will write the first 500 words of the proposal. I will code the login function. Make it small. Make it binary. Put the file on your desktop. Second, set your focus floor cue. Find the object, the timer, the headphones, the glass of water, and put it in the center of your desk. Clear everything else away. When you sit down tomorrow, that object is the only thing you should see. Third, publish your availability. Tell your team, your boss, or your family that tomorrow morning, from 9 to 10:30, you are going dark. Do not ask for permission. State your intention. I am going heads down to finish the X project. The final truth. I want to leave you with one last truth about addiction. We usually use the word addiction to describe a slavery to something that destroys us. We are addicted to drugs, to gambling, to screens. We are addicted to things that give us a quick hit and leave us empty. But the mechanism of addiction, the loop of cue, action, and reward, is neutral. It is just machinery. You can use that machinery to enslave yourself, or you can use it to liberate yourself. You can become addicted to the process of your own mastery. Imagine a life where the thing you crave most is not the distraction, but the creation. Imagine waking up with a hunger not for the news, but for the work. Imagine finishing a day not with a sense of relief that it's over, but with a sense of pride that it mattered. That life is not reserved for geniuses. It is not reserved for the lucky. It is available to anyone who is willing to take control of their own chemistry. You have the map, you have the engine, you have the fuel. The noise is waiting for you to come back. The apps are waiting. The emails are waiting. The world is screaming for your attention, begging you to shatter your focus into a million worthless fragments. Don't let them have it. Stand up, set the cue, begin.